Mr. Chairman, I apologize for Ms. Moore's phone going off. And,
the gentleman just earned himself an extra 15 seconds.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chair, thank you for being here. As you know, there is seemingly always, at least since I've been here, the bubbling up of interest in somehow reinstating the Glass-Steagall provisions. And actually, some of us at least struggle to try to get it inserted into Dodd-Frank, and unsuccessfully, I might add, in Sections 20 and 32, which deal with the consumer protection component. But the argument has continued, and I'm interested in your opinion, that some would say that the fact that we had the 2008 collapse was due in no small part to the failure to separate commercial banking from investment banking. What's your, and by the way, as you probably know, there are bills pending now. I mean, there are bills that have been introduced.
I think on that issue, that really is a legislative judgment. It really is a legislative judgment to make. I mean, clearly all the regulators since the crisis have been, very focused on reforming the existing system with the tools that we've been given to use, and I think they've been used quite effectively in most cases and quite vigorously. But I think that judgment really is for the Congress.
So the SEC obviously wouldn't have a position. It's a legislative issue, as you said. But I'm wondering, does it? I'll ask another way. I think I can predict your answer. But would the SEC find it easier to do its job if we had a separation between commercial and investment banking?
It might depend on what else went with that, I suppose. I don't think I can really comment on that. I'd have to see the precise parameters of it. I mean, I think all of our jobs are difficult and challenging, but I think under any regime they are.
All right. I thank you, and I appreciate your answer. I had hoped, but didn't think I would get an answer. In October of 2013, you elaborated on your approach in the SEC in terms of the enforcement program. You stated at the time that investors do not want someone who ignores minor violations and waits for the big ones that bring media attention. And so as a result of that, you announced that the SEC would be taking a broken windows approach. I'm assuming taking that out from the book that Mayor Giuliani wrote during the 1990s. However, in securities law context, other scholars have criticized that such approach inappropriately diverts Commission resources away from major fraud and towards small-time offenses. Do you agree?
I don't agree, and I also think there's been a fair amount of misunderstanding of from that speech as to what the program is. I mean, the broken windows comments was meant to be, by analogy. I do think it's important not to neglect smaller offenses that affect our small retail investors, for example. I also think it's important, and this was really kind of the core of what I was saying, to raise the bar of compliance so that if you've got important rules out there, they're not necessarily fraudulent conduct, but they're rules meant to protect the markets and investors, and there's massive noncompliance, that you might as well not have those rules unless you enforce them. So what we've done, and it's really a very small part of our program, but to target some of those areas very efficiently, and send a very strong message that these rules are meant to be followed and they're important to follow. In my judgment, we have not diverted at all resources from the Ponzi schemes, the accounting fraud cases, which we've also emphasized. So I think it's a piece of our program.
Well, I don't think we'll have time for my other follow-up question. So thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. I yield back, Mr. Chair.